Drums shook the air, deep and slow, as Daniel stood under the bright alien sun, sweat running down his neck. Alien dancers moved in circles around him, their long ribbons floating like streams of fire. Lyra, his new wife, stood tall beside him, her gold and silver armor gleaming. Her eyes, sharp and bright, locked on his as the elder priest tied their hands together with a glowing vine. The crowd of her people roared, stamping their boots in rhythm. When the vine sealed and the ceremony ended, Lyra leaned close, her breath warm against his ear. "I need you to do something for me," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the noise. "I need you to help my younger sister gain experience with males." Daniel froze. His mind stuttered over her words. The drums, the cheering crowd, all faded for a second. He turned his head slowly, searching her face for any sign she was joking. But Lyra's expression was calm, almost serious enough to be frightening. "That's not how humans," he began, but she cut him off with a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It is how my people prepare a female for her first mate," she said. "You are my husband now. You must help her, or they will say I chose a weak male." He wanted to argue, to tell her that this was insane, but the weight of 100 alien eyes pressed on him. He felt like prey in a ring of predators. Lyra guided him through the crowd, every step a blur until they reached a shaded balcony overlooking the city. Strange banners fluttered in the wind, each marked with symbols Daniel didn't know. Lyra's voice lowered to almost nothing. "Refuse, and the insult will not just fall on me, it will fall on you. There are those here who would use that insult as a reason to challenge you." Daniel gritted his teeth. "You're telling me I have no choice." "I am telling you," she said softly, "that this is the way to protect us both." The heavy sound of boots on stone made him glance over his shoulder. A tall guard in black armor approached, her helmet shaped like the skull of some alien beast. She bowed to Lyra, then stepped aside to reveal another figure standing in the doorway. Daniel's breath caught. She was smaller than Lyra, dressed in a long robe that brushed the floor. Her hair, silver with streaks of pale blue, hid part of her face. Her hands stayed folded in front of her as if she were trying to make herself invisible. But her eyes, large and glassy, lifted to meet his for a moment before darting away. "This is Kayla," Lyra said. "My younger sister." Kayla stepped forward slowly, bowing her head. Daniel noticed the way her fingers gripped her robe like she was holding on to something solid in a storm. "She has been kept apart from all males until now," Lyra continued. "The elders will expect her to be ready before the next moon." Daniel searched Kayla's face, looking for some sign that she was willing, but all he saw was nervous tension. Her lips pressed together as though holding back words. Kayla's voice was quiet, barely above the whisper of the wind. "It is an honor to meet you." Daniel forced a polite smile. "Same here." The guard stepped back, and Lyra took Daniel's arm, steering him toward the inner halls of the palace. "Tonight there is a feast in our honor," she said, as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb into his life. "After that, we will make arrangements for your time with Kayla." They passed through long corridors lit by floating crystals. Every wall seemed carved with alien faces, all watching. Daniel's mind spun, caught between disbelief and an uneasy curiosity about the quiet girl who had barely looked at him. At the feast, Lyra sat beside him at the head table while Kayla stayed 2 seats away, silent and watchful. The food was strange, meat with a metallic aftertaste, fruit that glowed faintly when cut. Daniel noticed Kayla eating slowly, her eyes flicking toward him every so often, almost like she was studying him. When the feast ended, Lyra leaned close again, her voice cutting through the music and chatter. "You will treat her gently," she said, "but you will not refuse her. She needs to understand a male before it is too late." Daniel swallowed hard, unsure whether too late meant for her or for him. That night, the palace grew quiet. Daniel walked alone in the upper hall, his footsteps echoing. He paused near a door slightly ajar. Inside, Kayla sat on the edge of her bed, her head bowed. She spoke in a soft, unfamiliar language, her voice shaking. A small metallic charm glimmered in her hands. She pressed it to her forehead before setting it on the table beside her. For a moment, Daniel thought she might have been praying. Then she lifted her head slightly, and the light caught a thin scar just behind her ear, half hidden by her hair. He stepped back before she could see him, but the image of that scar burned in his mind. He didn't know what it meant, but something about it told him Lyra's request wasn't just a tradition, it was hiding something deeper, something dangerous. The morning light spilled through the palace windows, casting long patterns on the polished stone floor. Daniel stood in the courtyard watching Kayla approach with slow, careful steps. She wore a soft gray dress, the fabric thin enough to ripple in the breeze. Her gaze stayed low, and her hands clutched a small woven bag. Lyra walked beside her, her movements firm and confident, the contrast between the two sisters impossible to ignore. Lyra stopped in front of Daniel. "Today you begin," she said, her tone leaving no space for argument. Kayla gave the smallest bow, still avoiding his eyes. The guard in black armor lingered nearby, silent but watchful. They walked together to a shaded garden where tall, alien flowers swayed, releasing a faint, sweet scent. Lyra left them there, her steps echoing away until she disappeared behind the columns. Daniel stood across from Kayla, searching for the right words. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. "You don't have to be afraid of me," he said softly. Her head tilted slightly as if she was considering the words, but her lips remained pressed together. A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of distant wind chimes. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was told humans are dangerous." Daniel gave a small laugh, though there was no humor in it. "And what do you think?" She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "I don't know yet." They walked among the flowers, the petals brushing lightly against their arms. Daniel pointed to one with bright blue veins running through its petals. "Back home, flowers are just flowers. Here they seem alive." Kayla reached out, touching the bloom with care. "This one closes if you speak too loudly," she said. Her voice was calmer now, almost curious. As they continued, Daniel asked her about her life before now. She answered in short phrases, kept inside the family's inner quarters, taught by older women, never allowed near men. She had seen battles from the palace walls, heard the screams when soldiers returned wounded, but never stepped into the chaos herself. They reached a stone bench beneath a large tree. Kayla sat, keeping her bag in her lap as though it were a shield. Daniel sat beside her, leaving space between them. "What's in the bag?" he asked. She hesitated, then loosened the strap. Inside was a small silver sphere with fine carvings and a faint glow. She held it as if it were fragile. "It's from my mother. She gave it to me before she—" Her voice trailed off and her eyes clouded. Daniel didn't push for more, sensing the weight behind her words. A sudden sound broke the moment, the clang of boots on stone. The guard appeared at the garden's edge, watching them with a stern, unreadable face. Kayla's posture stiffened instantly, her shoulders tightening. "You should go," the guard said in their language. Kayla stood quickly, her eyes dropping to the ground again. Daniel followed, feeling the tension cling to the air like a shadow. They walked back through the corridors, the guard trailing them. Outside Kayla's chamber, the guard stopped, speaking sharply to her before opening the door. Kayla disappeared inside without looking back. Lyra found Daniel in the hall soon after. "How did she seem?" she asked. "Nervous, always nervous," he said. Lyra's expression hardened. "It will pass, but you must move faster. The moon is not far now." "What happens when the moon comes?" "She will be presented," Lyra said, her voice low. "If she fails the trial, she will be given to the one who claims her, and that one will not be kind." The words struck him like a stone. "You mean the warlord?" Lyra didn't answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. That night, Daniel found himself pacing his chamber. The palace was quiet, the distant hum of alien insects drifting through the window. His mind kept returning to Kayla's quiet voice, her small movements, the scar behind her ear, the silver sphere she held like a lifeline. Footsteps sounded outside his door. He opened it to find Kayla standing there, her robe drawn tight around her. She glanced over her shoulder before stepping inside. "I need to ask you something," she whispered. Daniel closed the door. "What is it?" Her hands trembled as she held the silver sphere out to him. "If something happens to me, keep this safe. Don't give it to anyone here." He stared at her, confused. "Why would something happen to you?" Her gaze flicked toward the window as if the walls themselves were listening. "Because they do not want me to refuse him." The air between them felt heavy. Daniel wanted to ask more, but a sharp knock on the door made Kayla jerk back. She slipped out without another word. leaving him with the echo of her warning and the uneasy feeling that whatever Lyra had planned was not the whole truth. The training began in the palace's inner courtyard, where the high walls kept out wind and prying eyes. Kayla stood a few steps away, her hands clasped in front of her, her posture tense. Daniel had brought 2 wooden practice sticks, lighter than swords, but enough to teach balance and movement. She eyed them with suspicion, as though they were weapons meant for harm. He held one out to her. "It's safe, just hold it." Her fingers brushed his as she took it, and she immediately stepped back. She gripped the stick too tightly, her knuckles pale. Daniel showed her how to stand, how to keep her feet apart, how to shift her weight. She copied him in silence, her gaze flicking to the gate every few moments. When he swung slowly toward her, she flinched and turned her shoulder, the stick dipping. He stopped. "No one's going to hurt you here." Her lips pressed together, and for a moment she looked as if she might speak, but instead she raised the stick again. They moved through simple drills, blocking, stepping back, stepping forward. At first, she hesitated with every motion, but as the minutes passed, her movements grew steadier. After a while, they rested under the shade of a stone arch. Daniel handed her a flask of cool water. She drank, then glanced at him. "Why do humans protect?" The question caught him off guard. "Because we care about each other," he said. "Because someone's safety can matter more than our own." Her brow furrowed, as though the answer didn't fit something she had been taught. "My people protect only what belongs to them," she said softly. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "And what about those who can't protect themselves?" Her gaze drifted toward the ground. "They belong to whoever is strong enough to keep them." A chill worked its way up his spine. He realized this wasn't just about learning how to be with a male, this was about survival in a world where power decided worth. The sound of approaching footsteps made Kayla tense again. Lyra appeared, dressed in her ceremonial armor. She watched them for a moment before speaking. "You must do more than teach her to move. She must speak, look into your eyes, answer questions. If she can't do this with you, she will fail in front of the council." Kayla's fingers tightened around the practice stick. Lyra's eyes softened slightly. "You can rest now, sister. Daniel, walk with me." They left Kayla behind in the courtyard. Lyra led him down a long corridor lined with alien banners. "The trial is not just about skill," she explained. "It is about presence. She must convince the council she's been properly prepared, or the warlord will claim her by force." Daniel glanced at her. "And if she refuses?" Lyra stopped walking. "Refusal without passing the trial means death." That night, Daniel sat in his chamber, turning Kayla's words over in his mind. He thought of the silver sphere she had given him to protect, the way her voice had trembled when she spoke about the warlord. Something in her fear felt too deep to be only about tradition. The next morning, they met again in the courtyard. This time, Daniel left the sticks behind and instead taught her to walk at his side, to hold his gaze without looking away. She tried, but every time his eyes met hers for more than a second, she shifted uncomfortably. "Tell me about something you like, he said, hoping to make her relax. She hesitated, then said, "When the wind moves through the high grass near the river, it sounds like whispers." He smiled. "That's something I'd like to hear too." For a brief moment, her lips curved in the smallest smile before fading. "I do not know if I will hear it again." Before he could ask why, the palace bells rang, deep and urgent. Kayla froze, her hand clutching his sleeve. Guards moved quickly through the corridors, their weapons ready. Lyra appeared, her face set in hard lines. "The warlord's scouts have arrived in the city," she said. "They will send word to him before nightfall." Kayla's hand slipped from Daniel's arm, her eyes wide. She looked like someone watching a storm roll in, knowing it could not be stopped. Lyra turned to her sister. "You have less time than we thought. Tomorrow you will speak before the female council. If they believe you are ready, you will survive the trial. If not..." She left the rest unsaid. That night, Kayla didn't return to her room. Daniel found her sitting alone in the garden, the silver sphere resting in her lap. She didn't look up when he approached. "I don't think I can do it," she said quietly. "Yes, you can," he told her. "You've already started. You're stronger than you think." Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time, she didn't look away. "If I fail, promise me you will give this to someone outside the city. It must not stay here." Daniel nodded slowly, though he still didn't know what the sphere truly was. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, the warlord's men were already moving, and Daniel knew the next day would decide more than just Kayla's fate. It would decide whether either of them survived. The council chamber was vast and cold, its high walls carved with faces of past rulers. Kayla stood at the center, her hands folded, the silver sphere hidden away in her robe. 12 elder women sat in a curved row above her, each wearing heavy collars of rank. Their eyes moved over her like hunters judging prey. Daniel stood at her side, feeling the weight of the silence pressing on them. One of the elders leaned forward. "Step closer," Kayla obeyed, her steps careful. Another elder's voice cut through the still air. "You have been prepared by a male. Show us you have learned." Daniel glanced at Kayla, giving a small nod. She lifted her chin, met the elder's eyes, and spoke clearly. "I have learned to speak to a male without fear. I have learned to hold my place beside him. I am ready." The elders exchanged looks. One rose from her seat and descended the steps, circling Kayla slowly. "You say you are ready, yet your body trembles." Kayla's jaw tightened. "I tremble because you watch me like I am not a person." A faint murmur rippled through the chamber. Daniel almost smiled. There was steel in her voice now. The elder stopped in front of Daniel. "And you, human, has she been prepared in truth?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "She has courage, and she will face whoever stands before her." The elder's gaze narrowed. "Courage is nothing if the body is weak." Before Kayla could respond, the great doors swung open with a deep groan. A tall figure stepped inside, his armor black and edged in crimson. The warlord's presence filled the chamber instantly. His gaze swept over everyone before stopping on Kayla. "So," he said in a low voice that carried easily across the room, "this is the girl who thinks she can refuse me." Kayla's fingers dug into the fabric of her robe. The elders shifted uneasily, but did not stop him from walking closer. "You are small," the warlord said, circling her once. "You will not last a day in my house, but you are beautiful. That is enough." Daniel stepped forward. "She's not yours to take." The warlord's head turned slowly toward him. "And who will stop me? You?" The elder council watched, their silence heavy with fear. Kayla looked between the two men, her breath quickening. "If she passes the trial," Daniel said, "your claim is nothing." The warlord smirked. "Then I challenge you. If you can stand against me in combat, I will let her go. If you fall, she comes with me tonight." The chamber seemed to shrink around them. Lyra's voice broke through the tension. "The law allows it. If the male trainer defeats the challenger, the female's freedom stands." Kayla's hand brushed Daniel's arm, a silent plea not to do this, but he had already made his choice. The warlord laughed, his voice echoing off the stone. "Prepare yourself, human. I will give the council a show before I take what I want." By the time they left the chamber, word had already spread through the palace. The duel would be held at dusk in the arena. Daniel returned to his quarters, his mind turning over every possible way to survive. He had no plasma blade, no alien armor, just his speed, his wits, and whatever he could use from the arena's surroundings. Kayla appeared at his door as the sun began to drop. She looked pale, her hands gripping the silver sphere. "Don't fight him. He will kill you." "I'm not letting him take you," Daniel said. Her voice shook. "If you die, Lyra will suffer. I will suffer. Maybe it is better if I go." He shook his head. "No, you deserve to choose your own life, not have it stolen." She stared at him for a long moment, then pressed the sphere into his hand. "If you win, keep this safe. If you lose, hide it." The arena roared with noise as Daniel stepped onto the sand. The warlord was already there, his black armor gleaming under the lights. He carried a curved blade that hummed with energy. A horn sounded, and the warlord came at him instantly, a blur of speed and steel. Daniel dodged, feeling the blade pass close enough to slice the air against his skin. He grabbed a handful of sand and flung it at the warlord's face. The crowd gasped as the larger man staggered for half a second. It was enough for Daniel to dive behind him, using his momentum to slam the warlord into the arena wall. The impact rattled the ground, but the warlord recovered quickly, swinging his blade again. Daniel barely rolled away, the edge sparking against the stone. The duel raged on, the sound of metal and shouts filling the night. Every move Daniel made was desperate, but calculated. He couldn't match the warlord's strength, so he made him angry, forcing mistakes. When the warlord charged again, Daniel sidestepped. catching his leg and twisting. The larger man hit the ground hard. Daniel pinned him, a jagged piece of broken spear pressed to the warlord's throat. The arena fell silent. Daniel's voice was steady. "She's free." The warlord's glare promised revenge, but he rose without another word and left the arena. Kayla stood at the gate, her eyes wide, tears glinting in the light. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "You did it." Daniel handed the silver sphere back to her. "Now we make sure no one can ever take you again." The victory in the arena echoed through the city, but Daniel felt no relief. The warlord's glare had been more than wounded pride. It had been a promise. Kayla stayed close to him as they left the arena, her hands gripping the silver sphere tightly, as if letting go would mean losing everything. Lyra walked ahead, speaking with two guards in a language Daniel couldn't follow. Back in the palace, the halls seemed quieter than usual. Servants avoided their eyes, and some guards stared too long before looking away. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. "They're not celebrating," he murmured to Kayla. "They're afraid," she said softly. "He will not forgive this." That night, Lyra came to Daniel's quarters. She shut the door and leaned against it, her face tense. "You've given her freedom under the law," she said, "but you've also made an enemy who has power beyond it. The council cannot protect her if he moves without permission." Daniel frowned. "Then we keep her here. No one gets near her." Lyra shook her head. "He will find a way. We must prepare for him." Kayla entered quietly, holding the sphere. She set it on the table, the soft glow casting patterns on the walls. "I want to tell you what this is," she said. Daniel leaned forward. "It is a key," Kayla continued. "Not to a door, but to a vault. My mother left it for me. Inside the vault is proof that the warlord betrayed our people in the last war. If the council sees it, they can strip him of his rank." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "You've had this all along?" Kayla nodded. "Mother said to keep it hidden until I had someone I could trust." Her gaze shifted to Daniel. "Now I do." Before Daniel could respond, a loud crash shook the door. Lyra drew her curved dagger in a flash. Daniel grabbed Kayla and pulled her toward the inner room. Shouts filled the corridor, guards yelling, boots pounding. The door burst open and two masked figures charged in, their weapons glinting. Daniel shoved Kayla behind him and grabbed the nearest object, a heavy metal vase. He swung it hard, catching the first attacker across the head. The second lunged at Lyra, their blades clashing in a burst of sparks. Kayla's voice cut through the chaos. "Daniel, behind you!" He turned just as the first attacker rose again, blade raised. Daniel tackled him, the two of them crashing into the table. The silver sphere rolled across the floor, stopping at Kayla's feet. She scooped it up and darted toward the exit. Lyra shouted for her to run. The second attacker broke away from Lyra and went after Kayla. Daniel caught the man's leg mid-stride, sending him sprawling. Lyra finished him with a sharp strike that left him unconscious. Breathing hard, Daniel turned to Lyra. "That was no random attack." She nodded grimly. "He's testing our defenses." Kayla stood in the doorway, thus clutching the sphere. "We can't stay here." Lyra wiped her blade. "The palace is still the safest place for now, but we must move the key. If he gets it, all hope is gone." They decided to hide the sphere outside the palace walls. Under cover of night, Daniel, Lyra, and Kayla slipped through the servants' gate, moving through narrow back streets. The city felt different in darkness, shadows stretching long, whispers drifting from unseen alleys. They reached an abandoned shrine on the far edge of the city. Inside, cracked statues watched over them as Kayla knelt and placed the sphere in a hollow beneath the floor tiles. She covered it with dust and broken stone until it vanished from sight. Daniel touched her shoulder. "Now it's safe." Kayla's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her worry. "It's safe only if we live to use it." On the way back, they spotted movement on the rooftops. Figures were tracking them. Lyra quickened her pace, guiding them through a maze of alleys until they slipped back inside the palace gates just before dawn. In the courtyard, Daniel caught Kayla's hand. "You're not alone anymore. No matter what he tries, we'll stand against him." Her fingers tightened around his. "I believe you." From the balcony above, Lyra watched the horizon, where the first light of morning touched the city walls. Her voice carried down to them, quiet but certain. "The warlord will come soon. When he does, we will be ready." Daniel knew the fight in the arena had only been the beginning. The real battle, the one for Kayla's life and the truth she carried, was still ahead. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Guards doubled their patrols around the palace, but Daniel could feel eyes on them even when they were alone. Kayla stayed mostly in her chambers, speaking little, though her hands never strayed far from where the silver sphere had been hidden. Lyra spent long hours in meetings with the council, her face growing harder with each passing day. On the fourth night, a messenger arrived, cloaked in dark blue. He carried a sealed letter bearing the warlord's crest. Lyra broke it open without a word. Her eyes scanned the page, and her jaw tightened. She handed it to Daniel. It was a formal declaration. The warlord demanded Kayla's appearance at his fortress for private negotiation. If they refused, he would bring his forces into the city under the right of challenge. Kayla's voice trembled. That means war. Daniel folded the letter. It means he's desperate. He knows the law protects you now, so he wants to force you outside it. Lyra's gaze was cold. If he steps into the city with his army, many will die. We must end this before it begins. That night, Daniel went to the courtyard where Kayla often trained. She was already there, moving through slow patterns with a wooden staff. Her hair caught the moonlight, and for the first time, she looked less like a frightened girl and more like someone preparing herself for what was to come. You've been practicing, he said. She lowered the staff and met his eyes. If I can't fight, I can at least stand without fear. Daniel stepped closer. When the time comes, we'll face him together. Before she could answer, the sound of shouting cut through the air. The gate bells rang, an alarm. Lyra appeared at the balcony above them, her voice sharp. He's here. The palace erupted in movement. Guards rushed to the outer walls, crossbows loaded, shields raised. Daniel and Kayla followed Lyra to the grand hall, where the warlord himself stood in the open doorway. His armor glistened in the torchlight, and a dozen heavily armed soldiers flanked him. You hide her like a coward, the warlord said, his voice filling the hall. Bring her to me, or I will take her from your ashes. Lyra stepped forward, blocking his path. You lost your claim. Leave now. He laughed, a deep and ugly sound. Do you think a law will stop me? Daniel moved between Kayla and the warlord. You want her. You go through me. The warlord's eyes narrowed. Then I accept your offer. Before anyone could stop him, he lunged. Steel clashed as Lyra met his first blow, giving Daniel time to push Kayla toward the side exit. But two of the warlord's soldiers blocked their path. Daniel grabbed a spear from the wall and swung it in a wide arc, forcing them back. Kayla darted past one, but the other caught her arm. She twisted, jamming the end of the staff she carried into his ribs. The soldier staggered, and Daniel slammed the spear butt into his helmet, sending him sprawling. They ran through the side corridor, footsteps pounding behind them. Daniel led her toward the hidden servants' passage that opened near the outer gardens. They burst into the cold night air, breath visible in the torchlight. From the other side of the palace, the clash of battle echoed, Lyra holding the warlord's attention, buying them precious minutes. Kayla's voice was tight. If he wins. He won't, Daniel said, though the uncertainty burned in his chest. They reached the old shrine at the city's edge. Kayla dropped to her knees, pulling away the loose tiles to reveal the silver sphere. She held it for a moment, then looked at Daniel. We can't let him have this. If he catches us, you must run and hide it. Daniel shook his head. I'm not leaving you. A shadow moved across the shrine's entrance. The warlord stepped into view, his armor scratched but his stance unbroken. You think you can hide from me? Kayla gripped the sphere tighter. Daniel moved in front of her, spear raised. The warlord advanced slowly. Give her to me, and I may let you live. Daniel didn't answer. He charged instead, the spear striking against the warlord's blade. The impact jarred his arms, but he pressed forward, forcing the larger man back a step. The warlord's counterstrike was fast, slicing through the spear's shaft. Daniel dropped the broken weapon and grabbed a stone from the shrine floor, slamming it into the warlord's helmet. The warlord roared in anger, shoving Daniel hard enough to send him to the ground. He reached for Kayla, but she spun away, hurling the silver sphere to Daniel. Run! Daniel caught it and rolled to his feet. The warlord's blade came down, but Daniel dodged, the strike shattering part of the shrine wall. They circled each other, the sound of distant battle fading into the rush of blood in Daniel's ears. He saw the opening, just a fraction of a second, and drove forward, slamming his shoulder into the warlord's chest. They crashed through the wall into the cold grass outside. Kayla scrambled after them, her voice breaking. Daniel! He pushed himself up, still holding the sphere. We finish this now. The warlord rose slowly, his glare burning with hatred. The night air was thick with the promise of one final fight. Daniel moved before the warlord could fully recover, lunging forward and ramming his shoulder into the armored chest again. The impact forced the larger man back a step, but the warlord's blade swept out in a fast, brutal arc. Daniel twisted aside, feeling the edge tear through the fabric at his ribs. Pain flared, but he ignored it, keeping the silver sphere clutched tightly in his free hand. Kayla circled to the side, eyes locked on the fight. She gripped a broken piece of spear from the shrine floor, holding it like a dagger. The warlord advanced, each step deliberate, his armor grinding with the movement. You can't win, human, the warlord growled. Strength will always rule. Daniel met his eyes. Then I'll change the rules. The warlord swung, aiming for Daniel's head, but Daniel ducked low, driving his fist into the gap under the armored ribs. The warlord staggered slightly, but his counter came fast, a backhand that sent Daniel stumbling. The silver sphere almost slipped from his fingers. Kayla shouted his name and darted forward, jabbing the spear shard into the back of the warlord's knee joint. The alien roared in pain and turned toward her. Daniel took the opening, tackling him from the side. They both crashed to the ground, sand and dirt spraying. The warlord was strong, rolling Daniel onto his back and pressing the blade toward his throat. Daniel strained against it, his arms burning. Kayla struck again, this time at the warlord's helmet. The blow was enough to make him shift his weight. Daniel twisted violently, breaking free and grabbing the hilt of the warlord's weapon with both hands. They wrestled for control, the blade catching the moonlight as it shifted between them. Daniel slammed his elbow into the warlord's chest, then wrenched the weapon free. He rose quickly, the tip aimed at the man who had hunted Kayla for so long. End it, Kayla said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The warlord looked up, breathing hard. Kill me, and my soldiers will burn this city. Daniel's grip tightened. He didn't lower the weapon. Then they'll see their leader defeated, and they'll scatter. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the wind through the grass. Then, Daniel drove the blade into the ground beside the warlord's head, that so close it cut a line across his cheek. You leave, now, or next time, I won't miss. The warlord's glare burned, but he rose slowly, favoring his injured knee. This isn't over. He limped into the shadows, disappearing toward the outer road. The sound of distant battle faded as his forces withdrew from the city. Daniel turned to Kayla, still holding the silver sphere. It's finished, for now. They returned to the palace under the first light of dawn. The guards opened the gates cautiously, scanning the empty streets behind them. Lyra met them in the courtyard, her armor scratched and her hair damp with sweat. Relief flickered in her eyes when she saw them both alive. He's gone? She asked. Daniel nodded. He won't try again soon, but he still wants her. Kayla stepped forward, placing the sphere into Lyra's hands. It's time to use it. If the council sees what's inside, they can strip him of his power forever. Lyra looked at her sister for a long moment, then nodded. We'll go to them today. The council chamber was tense when they entered. The elders listened in silence as Kayla explained what the sphere contained and how her mother had hidden it to protect the truth. When they activated the device, an image filled the air. Records of the warlord's secret deals with enemy forces, maps showing the betrayals that had cost thousands of lives. Gasps spread through the chamber. One elder rose, her voice sharp. These crimes cannot be ignored. He will be hunted and his title stripped. Kayla stood tall, no longer hiding behind her hair or her silence. Then I am free. The council agreed, their verdict final. The warlord was declared an outlaw, and Kayla's safety was guaranteed under the highest law of their people. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Kayla sat with Daniel beneath the wide branches of an alien tree. I never thought I would see this day, she said. Daniel smiled faintly. You earned it. You fought for it. Her gaze softened. I didn't fight alone. Lyra joined them, her presence calm now, the weight of the past days finally lifting. Our family is stronger than he ever understood, she said. Daniel looked between the two sisters. Then let's keep it that way. For the first time since he had met her, Kayla laughed, quiet and genuine. The sound carried into the warm morning air, a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together.